Afternoon, everyone. I will call the Strategic Initiative Standing Committee meeting of November 28th to order. It's 3 o'clock and time to get down to business. Today we acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional territory of the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island. We are thankful to share in the special spirit of this place, rich in the energy of Mother Earth, our ancestors, and the love of all creation. I'll look for a motion to adopt the agenda. So move that the content of the Strategic Initiative Standing Committee agenda for November 28, 2018 be adopted as presented. Can I get a second? Councilor Madigan. Call the vote then. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Any declarations of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof for today's meeting? Seeing none, if you find yourself in that position as we go through the agenda, please let me know. We'll start off with deputations. Today we have a deputation from Jim Fryer on the divestiture of the Collis assets. Mr. Fryer, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Acting Clerk, will you be working the slides or? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Saunderson, Council and staff. Again, I wanted to thank Acting Clerk Dahl for assisting me with being included on this agenda. My intention in trying to make a delegation at the last meeting was for the most part due to an expectation of a very lengthy meeting, not just an extra 5 minutes to speak with council. When I approached council back in January on this subject, confirmation was that more detail on the key aspects of the F4 transaction part would be reported on to the public. Not having seen any specifics, I knew that I could have missed something, so requested in July the closing financial statements of the September 30th, 2018 as a starting point. Having received those this week, I've been able to verify some of what I wanted to review. There is more work required to complete the analysis. I just have 3 slides with some bullet points that I will elaborate a little bit to you about, as well as use them to stay on time. I know that this isn't a presentation for discussion, but I hope to provide enough background for the 2 requests I outlined at the end of the report. So next slide, please. So 2012-18, the divestiture outcome. What was the overall outcome of the 6-year divestiture and sale process? By far, this was Collingwood's largest asset sale to date, or likely in the future. That is at least as far as an OBCA asset that council is the shareholder of, because there aren't any others. I don't believe the province is likely to do it with water or wastewater. Gross proceeds and also ancillary benefits worth millions in impact. I reviewed with staff last month that gross proceeds is an appropriate starting point to analyze the combined 6-year outcome. Based on current information, in excess of $31 million was designated towards Collingwood over this period. The Henley Consulting valuation in 2016, a transaction-based enterprise value, had an upper amount of $30 million. Determining direct expenses, investments, and associated allocations is the next stage of analysis and review. In regards to ancillaries, one of these is the 25-year operations center lease commitment, which should be in the range of $5 million for value. This benefit highlights the importance of the decision in 2001 to turn over ownership at no cost from the Collingwood Public Utilities Commission Hydro Department to Collingwood to provide another form of annual dividend stream. It's a very complicated sale process for an Ontario LDC. There was 3 stages. Collingwood selling Power Stream selling back to Collingwood selling the F4 with the 100% sale. It's complicated for the public and also preparing a summary report. The sale process itself has involved 3 different councils, for example. At the time of sale, it's generating over $1 million in annual return and a 10+% return on equity. A bona fide concern with any LDC sale is the loss of guaranteed income stream, especially one earning 10% plus on equity. The closing statements show that a high return continued for 2018 for a number of reasons. There are items on these statements that need more review in that regard. Another concern, of course, is the loss of control, especially from a rates and system reliability point of view. It's been stressed from the start, though, that the OEB provides full oversight to ensure no matter who the owner of the asset is, these matters will remain consistent. That can and will be monitored locally too. No all-encompassing detailed report to date. I put a question mark here because there may be an analysis that has been done by one of the consultants that puts it all together. I'm not aware of it. Perhaps this may be in the closing book. And I'll circle back to that closing book a little bit later. Next slide, please. So, some key historic milestones. Just a bit of history here. I've listed some important milestones of past council decisions in regards to the evolution of electricity supply for Collingwood. Water and Light Commission was formed in 1908. The first municipal electricity contract from Hydroelectric Power Corporation of Ontario was 1912. Collingwood took on the lead role for this cooperative regional contract with HEPC from the Big Chute generation station. 700 horsepower of electricity, that's what was delivered. White coal to our doors, precursor of brighter, better times, were the descriptions that were used when it was covered in 1913. The delivery of the initial load in February 1913 was a pivotal, progressive move, as electricity use had mostly been for commercial purposes in Collingwood. Residential application was now available. Collingwood Utilities Commission supplies Wasaga, Nottawa, and Truman in 1924. I included this because it indicates Collingwood's cooperative regional aspects were prevalent even back then. New terminals. The 2300 volt shipyard feed was expanded to a 44,000 volt feed in 1929. So this highlights another important impact of the terminals that you are considering your options on in this term. The whole town benefited from the resulting better rates that came about as a major consumer of electricity in the region. Collis established, 1998 Electricity Act, in the year 2001. I fast forward to this point and just highlight that a major regulation was for it to be formed as an OBCA company. Collingwood, through Collis, purchases Stainer, Creemore, and Thornbury assets. I note here Collingwood's continuing commitment to direct regional participation, in particular because these purchases were in the range of 1.1 to 1.2 of book value. The Epcor premium factor, if I recall correctly, was in the 1.8 range. Also, the increase in customers then allowed for costs to be distributed over a larger base, helping to keep rates lower. Collis and PowerStream, Partnership Initiative 2012. This, of course, was the first stage of divestiture, with the 50% partnership model being undertaken. Epcor, the new electricity distributor, 2018. This, of course, was the last stage of divestiture in the 2018 transitions Collingwood away from 110 years of municipal ownership. I certainly continue to support that decision. What are the expected impacts in the future? The opportunities are still being worked on, so I haven't included anything in the precursor of. I think that's something that's going to be coming out shortly when we know more about the situation. Final slide. I put down some summary and future steps. To close off, I will summarize with what I would describe as a needs list, and I do have a couple of requests to put forward surrounding these matters. The need for historical detail for future review purposes. While trying to research some of this, I was struck by how much historic detail on the public utilities is no longer readily available. Addressing that gap, though, will be more a work in progress, perhaps a new website or such. I think the details should be recorded, if possible, for transparency purposes and in case there's any future review. There's a need for summary report with divestiture. It's a unique transaction with proceeds and disposition stretching over a period of 7 years. I expect my concept of what should be done here may be different than others. To assist as I continue working on my approach, though, I would request Council's consideration to sometime in the near future allow me to review the closing book, records of the Epcor transaction, the needs of the municipal electricity customer, their service reliability and rate impacts that are going to be felt forever. There's regional aspects to be considered. There's the need for the relationship between Collingwood and Epcor to evolve, and the liaison committees matter to that. So for the last two areas, as I noted earlier, the community liaison liaison committee will be very much a central part of this, especially when rate change analysis is undertaken. I am interested in following the progress closely and would request that these meetings be open to the public. Those are my remarks, and at this time, we'll turn it back to the chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fryer. We have your concerns, or your requests, we noted them. I think on some fronts, we may need to get legal advice about the public nature of some of the requirements or documents you're requesting, so we'll look into that. And before I let you go, is there any member around the table that has any questions or comments? Mr. Fryer on his deputation. Councilor Young.
I'll just yell. I was just wondering, you mentioned the need for historical documents. That's okay. So I was wondering, do you have some of those?
The reason I made the unique request about the closing books is because I know a lot of the summary data will be put together for the closing.
No, not the closing data, sorry to interrupt, but the point you made about there's a history to our public utility corporation, and it should be appreciated before it's lost. And I know you have some of that too. So I was just wondering if you have a more fulsome summary of that historical information. I was thinking you could make available to the museum.
Yeah, what I was referring to there was there's no longer a public utilities website. There's the UPCOR website, certainly. It's about UPCOR, and it should be. But there's very little. If you go in, you Google, and you have a look on the web, it doesn't readily come up. There's places you can go and you can find it. You certainly, our museum here and library have a wealth of background information. But what I was really looking at this point in time was trying to summarize some of the data. And I think a bunch of the work would have already been done in the closing book. And I just like the opportunity to be able to do that. I didn't think about a freedom of information or anything like that because I really don't even know what I'm thinking would be there. So it's a unique request, and I recognize that, and that's why I wanted to approach council directly today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to see any other questions. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda, we have first of our staff reports. 5.1 is the Parks and Recreation Cultural Progress Review. And I will look to the director, Mr. Bowman, for the report.
I've been asked a few times if I'm nervous, and the answer is yes. We're all in this together, so do the best I can. On your own? On my own, yeah. That's not what you said before. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of reading. I think, first of all, I want to thank you guys for your patience in having us get here. It's been a bit of a long road, and I appreciate the support of CAO, and I'm going to mention somebody else who was integral in helping us push this past the finish line. So thank you for the opportunity to present this operational review. Having the chance to develop this presentation for you led to a massive learning accomplishment for PRC management staff. While we take a great deal of pride in the services we deliver, we've not gone through the process of modeling our department to identify how resources relate to outcomes, the outcomes we're charged to produce. So this was an excellent tool for us to not only reinforce our understanding of our role in the municipality, but also to provide a means of understanding the management of resources and how their presence or absence relates to departmental outcomes. There you go. I need to acknowledge the role that Executive Director Skinner played in assisting us through the finish line of this project. Prior to her arrival, we've been building an organization of our departmental budget, GL level expenses, which, by the way, they're all included in the supplemental part of your document. With Sonia's help, we're presenting you with a much clearer paradigm that we strongly believe will help everyone, staff and council, to be on the same page. So for reference, I'm going to take you back to the PRC master plan and the vision statement that was resulting from that document. According to this vision statement, the highest order of outcomes that we contribute is that we contribute to healthy lifestyles in Collingwood, and we provide facilitation between the naturally existing assets and those that are provided by the municipality. To have this conversation with you, we needed to ensure that we're using the same language and we have the same definitions in mind. This exercise is focused on the target group we call Collingwood community. There may be residual effects that have benefit outside of the community, for example, affecting visitors to the area, or people from outside the community who have an interest in learning the history of Collingwood. But this exercise and our core competencies focus specifically on the Collingwood community. Outcomes are represented by the needs of the community. The Parks, Recreation and Culture Department has a mandate to serve these needs within parameters that were recently outlined in our PRC master plan. The community-based strategic plan also showed the department what our mandate is. Based on this, we can label outcomes so that they are widely understood. The program provided by the municipality to achieve these are provided by the municipality to achieve these outcomes. And the definition of a program means that it is responsible for a single outcome and is a collection of town services that come together for this purpose. Services provide a specific output that can be identified by a stakeholder and contributes to the achievement of public goals and creates a desirable change in the level of need in the community. The resources that make services possible may be tangible or intangible. A tangible resource is money, which is an obvious one. An intangible resource might be knowledge, relationships, or even standards. So why do we need to find programs? We need to find programs to provide that causal relationship between the expenditure of resources and the outcome the community expects. Identifying programs also allows us to speak the same language, whether it is within the organization, with council, or our public stakeholders. It also allows us to agree on measurements and understand if we're moving forward or standing still with respect to the services we deliver. I'm not keeping up with my slides. Okay, now I am. There we go. So we borrowed an Ontario public service model for the sake of this presentation. Borrowed is stole. We stole it. The OPS handbook that describes this model is exceptionally sophisticated, so my staff and I have adopted a simplified version for the sake of this exercise. As mentioned earlier, this project was a great opportunity to dig into our business architecture. We've been able to scratch the surface of something called service science, which is an interdisciplinary approach to the study, design, and implementation of service systems through understanding the organization of people, technologies, resources, and shared information. We're definitely at this point only scratching the surface, but it's exciting to see the possibilities for enhanced approaches to decision-making and new and innovative ways we might be able to manage resources and services. So what you're looking at here is a graphic representation of the public service reference model from the OPS. The model was designed for Ontario, and it shows a very complex interrelationship of things. For the province of Ontario, this model is referencing a broad jurisdictional area and hundreds of thousands of touch points and deliverables that provide for the needs of 14 million people. So we took a lot simpler approach. We adapted this model for our exercise, which is the first time we've ever made this kind of presentation. We stripped away several elements for the sake of clarity and to find an easier way of templating this deep dive. In the longer term, there's absolutely an opportunity for us to use the more complex model as work capacities will allow. To map out our organizational componentry, the experience of putting this together for you is leading us in that direction. But for now, it's 100% more important that we ensure clarity. So all of that background leads us to the deep dive itself. Now that we've shown you the model template, we're going to use that template to express the PRC operational model. One of the first things I need to let you know is that in its current formation, PRC has just 2 programs. This was a relatively recent epiphany, as the complexity of our work seems to fly in the face of our overall outcome being able to be counted on just one hand. But this is the value of using this modeling approach. It allows us to see the interrelationships and the collective impact of all of our departmental resources. Through the development of the community-based strategic plan, the PRC master plan, the active transportation framework, the cycle plan, and even nuances of such documents as the waterfront master plan and the official plan, we see our role in PRC being that of contributing to well-being in Collingwood and and our vision statement reflects the promotion and facilitation of healthy and active lifestyles. To achieve this vision, we generate 2 programs that we can identify as active living across the lifespan and community inclusion through culture, art, and social connection. The first program is designed to provide a supportive environment and engagement that centers on a physically active community. In doing this, we realize such benefits as increased physical health and wellness for residents of all ages, increased life expectancy, reduced utilization of healthcare, improved mental health, improved social health, reduction of unhealthy stress, and more. The second program is designed to provide a supportive environment and engagement that centers on our stakeholders experiencing connection, inclusion, and belonging. In achieving this outcome, we realize benefits like an enriched community where safe and inclusive spaces exist for all forms of expression, the promotion of dialogue and discourse that broadens interpersonal experiences and learning, a sense of place and identity that gives comfort, security, and satisfaction to residents, enhanced social capital, building a cohesive community that sees itself as broadly supportive in addressing at-risk populations, improved mental wellness, and more. So this is a crazy slide, which is why you guys have a hard copy in front of you. To execute the program of active living across the lifespan and achieving the outcome of a physically active community, PRC provides the services listed here. I'm going to go through the services column just to sort of explain that a little bit more. And aquatics includes swim instruction, open swim, aquafit, and other group fitness opportunities. Rentals of the pool facility for patrons such as the Clippers, schools, healing and therapy. The sailing school service includes instruction as well as camp experiences for youth and adults. PRC provides access to outdoor activity by maintaining playgrounds, green spaces, and trails. Our staff encourage, enhance, and protect natural spaces, and we provide safe access to water recreation in the harbor and on Georgian Bay. We take great pride in delivering quality sports fields and outdoor sports facility experiences for soccer, rugby, baseball, tennis, pickleball, and more. Through vehicles such as the web and social media, our activity guide, and other forms of promotion, we work to keep the community informed of opportunities to be involved in activity, whether it is provided by the town or others. Via 4 primary building facilities, we provide access to indoor activity that may take the form of skating, hockey, curling, and pickleball in the summer. And finally, we provide access to events that may have a range of physical benefits, from dancing to walking the downtown for art and music crawl, to simply being outside and breathing fresh air during an amphitheater, concert, or gathering place event. On the left side, in that busy jumble there, you'll see the resources that are needed to provide these services. It's difficult to read, but if you recall the definition of resource from previously in this presentation, that list includes both tangible and intangible assets. Staffing, funding, the physical capital assets are all there, as well as relationships, research knowledge, feedback, and more. I'm going to take a second to talk about the contracted services, because we acknowledge the contracted services or outsourced services as a vital resource for us as well. Where we don't have the internal expertise or equipment, where expenses are lessened for a vendor by virtue of their scope of business in a specific area versus ours, or where it would be tactically inefficient to produce an entire resource enterprise to deliver a service, we look to contractors to fill the resource gaps. Council should know that we are constantly reviewing our capacities and expertise to determine which tasks or workloads are better managed by outsourced vendors and which are most effectively and or efficiently delivered by your staff. Moving on to our second program, again, super hard to read. The program called Community Inclusion Through Culture, Art, and Social Connection. And we produce town events such as Side Launch Days, Canada Day, a winter festival, which is currently being developed. And we partner Music Crawl with Art Crawl in September. We host music events in the Shipyard Amphitheater, knowledge exchanges at the Avalon Gathering Place, and the Creative Collingwood Symposium at the Simcoe Street Theatre. PRC also provides third-party access to cultural spaces like the amphitheater, the theatre, the Gathering Place, and other park facilities. We've delegated authority from council to permit events on town property and to support events and activities with the in-kind support program and community recreation and culture grant. The activity guide, our web presence, and the use of social media, we provide that plus and much of that is done in conjunction with the corporate communications role, also contributing to the outcome of this program. We also acknowledge the overlap provided by some of our more physical recreation services and work to ensure that the service provides opportunities for enhanced social engagement. For example, our very popular AquaFit services provide both a physical output towards the active living program and a strong social component that supports inclusion and community interconnection. PRC supports many forms of artistic expression and supports all makers in the pursuit of creativity. Collingwood is known for its public art, so we look after these works. We take every opportunity to grow the public art collection, and we use these assets to promote the awareness and support of all arts and the impacts they generate. The resources that we use to provide services have many detailed levels. The supplemental document you have received with your package gets into that detail level. To help with the identification of resources to details, the following categories have been used and can be found as referenced in the supplement. And right-hand figures indicate the rolled-up totals in each of these resource buckets. So I'm just going to quickly provide quick definitions. So an administration bucket would include things like office supplies, and in some cases, some of our corporate charges, like transfer to capital reserve, which represents the office spaces that are occupied corporate buildings. Associations are our memberships, fees, dues, etc., that help us get access to some of the knowledge and standards that our industry resources provide. That number is a little skewed as well because it also includes the fees for the Elvis Festival that we paid in the past, about $15,000 Canadian. That covers the license for use of the Elvis logo and trademarks. Building systems is our HVAC or environmental systems, but also includes things like the specific mechanical for the swimming pool or the arenas. Contracted services, as I mentioned earlier, is where we've outsourced to get access to higher level of expertise or fill a resource gap. The equipment is rolling stock, vehicles, etc. Green space is the cost of looking after all of our natural spaces, whether they be manicured or naturally kept. Health and safety is what it costs, and it seems like a small dollar, but it is what it costs for us to help take care of our staff and ensure their safety. Indoor facilities, I think that's relatively obvious. Information output is materials that we generate to make sure that the community knows what's going on. Information technology is everything from our landline phones all the way to laptops and etc. Outdoor facilities is, again, quite obvious, I think, but playgrounds, sports fields, etc. Service providers, this is everything from talent that we use when we put on something at the amphitheater all the way to instructors that we might hire to provide a specific course. And then staff. And I know the staff number is huge, and relative to other costs, it's huge, and you can see that in a bit more of a graphic way in a second. Just to extrapolate this, and I know I'm talking apples and oranges, we manage about $50 million worth of community assets, ranging from the arenas, the pool, the parks, etc. So $3.9 million against $50 million, $3.9 million annually. Relative to a $35,000 car, it costs about $2,000 to put gasoline in the tank every year. And that proportion is actually in line with this. Again, I know it's apples and oranges, but it gives you an idea of where we look at staff. They are the gasoline that run our engine. We are a staff and labor-intensive program area, and they are the gas. They take care of us. And then finally, our less tangible, but equally important resource details, like relationships. Relationships, they may be with community bodies such as minor sports organizations or local recreation groups, volunteer and service club organizations, internal corporate departments and resources, other municipalities, upper-tier government resources. They don't appear on the budget ledger, but they are very important to helping achieve successful programs. And information inputs and outputs. They don't appear on the budget either directly, but they represent our efforts of keeping the public informed and all public engagement that helps us to understand the needs of the community. It's also a very important ingredient to achieving successful outcomes. So this is the pie chart I promised. Kind of again shows the scope of our work. go through this in detail, but I think I made the point of how this is distributed. I also want to make note of the fact that we have many synergies across the entire corporate organization. Some of the examples are here, but really a lot of these fall into the tangible and intangible. There's tangible resources, obviously, but a lot of it is sharing knowledge, expertise, and maybe pieces of equipment too. From public works and engineering, for example, we'll borrow equipment that we don't have, and even operators occasionally, to help us achieve some things that we need to do. Maybe they're in events or parks. Communications I talked about. We rely heavily on communications to make sure that our messages get out, and that our messages are consistent and match with the corporate format. IT, I think, is obvious. In clerks, for example, knowledge of process and information that helps us to understand how we can move things through a governance structure is really, really important. Library, we collaborate with them on such things as public health initiatives, inclusion initiatives, and we have an overlap with the museum as well, and we're working on strengthening that partnership too. Finance, HR, obviously these are massive resources and essential to how we do what we do. So PRC, we're committed to this ongoing examination process. We are working to adopt kind of a new emerging interest and thrust for the community in terms of customer satisfaction and customer focus. We're looking at, in 2020, we'll be doing semi-annual customer satisfaction surveys that are based on how people receive the services. We're trying to get quantifiable measurements so that we can then understand what our benchmarks are and how to continuously improve. We'll be looking at CSM software that is going through the IT resource committee right now. And we're also looking at how we can use our new software, our new system called Perfect Mind, gain more specific feedback against service offerings. These will all be metrics and measurements that we'll use in determining whether we're successful or not. And also bring your attention back to the master plan, which identified the Canadian Index for Wellbeing and the Framework for Recreation in Canada municipal assessment tool as ways that we were going to be able to take a look at our progress against the master plan objectives. So I'm asking council and encouraging you to dig into the supplemental materials, be in contact with myself or staff. All of my leadership staff are here. I'm happy to answer questions and have been, I can't even tell you, actually without getting emotional, how supportive they are of building something like this. It was a big undertaking, it was a big effort, but it was also a really, I think, rewarding experience to get to this place where we can see ourselves in the form of a model and know that we can talk to you in that context and hopefully have you understand that we're driven towards the outcomes. And we're looking forward to continuing the conversation in the future as well. So at this time, my staff, myself, we're here for questions. That didn't take as long as I thought it was going to, so happy to also just go sit down.
Dave, we'll let you sit down because we're going to open the floor to the public.
Sure.
Before I do that, I'm going to turn it over to the CAO who has a few comments.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks, Dean. And I also want to echo some of the sentiments expressed by Dean. I think this was a tremendous effort on the part of Dean and his management team, and I feel very privileged, as I've said before, to be leading a team consisting of the caliber of people that work in PRC and elsewhere in this organization. So thanks to Dean and his team. I want to remind council and members of the public why we undertook this exercise, and this was a commitment that was made by me as part of the 2019 budget deliberations. And the objective was to try and do a thorough review of every single department throughout the 4 years of a council term, so that by the end of a council term, we would have had an opportunity to examine every single program in detail. I should remind council and members of the public as well that this is not an exercise necessarily in cost containment. This is about relevance, it's about value added, and it is also about trying to find a way of opening up the budget to the public, so you understand how the money is being spent, and you have an opportunity to question staff about how that expenditure occurs. The final point I make, and I think Dean made this point as well, is to try and see if we can find additional ways of delivering services. So Dean mentioned contracting out, and this was an issue that I know a number of members of council raised during our last budget deliberations, and we'll have a lot more to say about this at the next SIC meeting as we unveil the 2020 budget. But this is about looking at contracting out. It is also about looking at synergies across the organization. He mentioned the fact that it might be opportunities to look elsewhere to try and find ways of ensuring that we reduce costs. So this is about efficiency, it is about efficacy, it is about transparency, and it is about ensuring that as staff, we have an opportunity to examine in detail the expenditures that you're asking council and the public to fund. So again, I want to thank Dean and his staff, and I also want to mention to council that this is the initial program review we have undertaken, and the intention is to identify one other department for a similar review in 2020. So this is our inaugural program review, and this is, as Dean said, a learning experience for him and for all of us. So we hope that he will take this opportunity to examine what Dean has put before you and let us know what you think and provide us with a way forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fareed. And since this is an SIC, a standing committee meeting, I will look to the audience. Anyone that would like to comment or has questions arising out of Dean's presentation, now's your chance. Please go forward. Seeing none, then I will look to put the item on the floor for council. So the recommendation is that staff report CC 12-2019-3, different report. There's no recommendation. So how am I going to put this on the floor? Did I show them? All right, we're just going to ask questions then. So council, do you have any questions then for Dean on his presentation? Councilor O'Connor.
Over here.
The CAO has said that this is about efficiencies and efficacy of the programs delivered. In the course of your searching through what it is one does at PRC, did you find anything that can be efficiency the way?
I don't want to give the short answer, because the short answer is no. That wasn't sort of a focus, it was an opportunity to find that focus, I think. And I think that this tool allows us, this modeling allows us to take a look at the relationship between resources and outcomes. And as we go through the process of measuring and getting feedback from the public on the programs and whether we're successful or not, what we do is we get the opportunity to take a look at those resources and whether we can save money in one place or whether resources need to be expanded in order to achieve the outcome. The OPS model actually dictates that outcomes are your actual primary target. To do it in the opposite way is actually less efficient. So take a look at resources and then just figure out how to sort of buckshot services out is actually less efficient than understanding what you're trying to achieve at the end. So this model allows us to kind of put a bit of a laser scope on that, and then we get to go back and take a look at our resources and make sure they match up with what the intended outcomes are. Again, I didn't want to give you this the short no. We didn't sort of automatically find some efficiency, and I would say in many ways we're more identifying that we're capacity strapped a bit, but now we have a model that we can use to actually do a little bit clearer examination.
Thank you. One more, if that's all right, Mr. Chair, through you. So we talked a little bit about health and a healthy, active community. Can you maybe just expand on that a little bit and tell me what you think success looks like? I mean, are you going to Kaihai and looking for heart attack rates in the neighborhood? Or, I mean, how do you quantify that sort of stuff?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I've been listening, going through you. So the PRC master plan actually identified some of those big overarching objectives, and we used that to sort of identify the outcomes we were seeking when we identified these two programs, which are essentially labels that collect the services into a targeted format. So through the PRC master plan and through such tools as the Index for Wellbeing in Canada and the Framework for Recreation Canada municipal audit tool, we're able to sort of take some of the higher level health impacts and assess. I mean, once we have some benchmarking, and at this point we haven't done the benchmarking, but we do the benchmarking, we can use Canada's guides as a bit of a reference. And we can say, where does Collingwood fall, and then see if we're improving against those objectives. So there are tools that we have in play, which now, through this, actually apply to this model, like they actually work with this model, and then that drives us back to resources again. So it's got it, through this process, which I say, I think when Fareed first mentioned it to me, I was daunted and scared, and still am. But I think what we come to is a place where we now understand actually resources and how they could actually affect those outcomes as you described it. That we had a kind of a targeted reference, but we don't know how to get there if we don't understand how resources relate to that. So this has actually been a really positive, constructive project in that regard.
Thank you.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor McLeod. The other consideration to supplement what Dean says is that in the detailed sheets that you have accompanying the presentation is a listing of many of the programs that we have across the organization. So I think part of the exercise as well is if there are things in there that you think as elected officials that we shouldn't be doing, I think we'd like to hear about that and we can talk through some of the consequences of that. And I think this, coming on the heels of the budget next week, provide you with an additional opportunity to translate what you've seen here into the 2020 budget deliberations. So it's an attempt to try and identify the programs that we deliver in PRC and continue to ask the question, is this program still relevant in the community and should we continue to deliver it? Because what tends to happen in a typical budget exercise is that we add our cost of living increase and all of the inflation increases without examining the core budget. And the intention in this exercise was to actually go into the core budget and see what's in there before we begin to add inflationary increases or cost of living increases or whatever else. So I encourage members of council to look at the more detailed reports, and if there are things in there that you identify that could be helpful, and as Dean says, the outcome might be that there are things that you think we don't do enough of, and we should expand. And so I think that would be a discussion that we also would need to have as part of our 2020 budget deliberation.
Council, any other questions or comments? Councillor Hammond.
Thank you. Worship, I just wanted to thank staff for this this exhaustive look at, approach to looking at how the department operates. And I don't underestimate how much thinking went into this. And I really, this is more of a comment, I really enjoyed, if I can put it that way, the fact that it's been identified that there are two programs. And I guess I do have a question. Is it fair then to say, as we look at the programming for this department, that we will see that it should fit into one of these two programs, one being active living and the other being community inclusion?
This is efficiency, by the way, right?
Yeah.
Through your chair. So yes, absolutely, that is actually the biggest value of identifying these two programs is to ensure that if we're doing, we are, listen, I think everybody knows that our department has a broad reach, like it covers a lot of territory laterally, and there's no end, I think, given the nature of what we do, for there to be requests for enhancement of services or taking on something new. And in a lot of cases, we've done that. We've done it because we didn't have this kind of focus. So having these two program buckets as sort of the targets actually allows us to have an answer and an explanation when we're approached or when we're faced with some of the very important, the fact that we don't do it doesn't make it less important. But the very important thing, we just have a way to say, nope, this is our focus, this is the direction we're going in. You know, there's lots of ways of saying it, sharpening the tip of the spear and all that. And actually, this was really, really important to be able to help us do that, and I think going forward, it's going to provide a big advantage for us.
Thank you.
Council? Seeing none, I have a question for you, Dean, and I guess I want to preface it with some comments. Yeah, as the CEO has said, when we sat down initially, had these discussions about the deeper dives into various departments, it was really efficiencies and budget driven. And when I say budget driven, I was talking about bottom line numbers in terms of how can we save money moving forward. But I guess my question really to you is, when you said initially to Councillor McLeod, you didn't find any efficiencies really. But at the same time, is it fair to say that by digging into the operations and looking at the operating model of your department, you found focus in terms of what services you deliver, what the stresses are on your staff, and what the operational costs are and the capital costs are? And it sounds to me like in getting that focus, we're setting the table when we move forward to find efficiencies by finding ways that we can marry or combine services, and then where we're falling down. So I guess my comment is really in moving forward with some areas, by finding or looking at enhancements, you may actually be increasing the efficiency of the operations of the organization, because we're going to be leveraging our staff and our programs more efficiently. And so I guess where I started on this was that the cost, the bottom line cost, isn't necessarily the declining factor of efficiencies. And I think that your comment that you be more focused on how operations go, I think the answer might be you have found efficiencies that are expressed in the minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That's actually bang on. This model now allows us to kind of take a look at where the bullseye is, whereas kind of throwing a dart at a wall isn't anywhere near as efficient. So absolutely, what you state is correct. I'll also state that what we're hoping as an outcome of this is that there be a common language that we can now talk to council about. So for example, we've identified these two programs, and we have identified for you the services that it takes to serve those programs. There's now an opportunity for you to say, yeah, that program is not exactly what we see as the decision makers in the community, whether it's through your own feedback or feedback we acquire elsewhere. And we can say, we'd like you to adjust this program. And now we have a common language by which we can do that. We can reduce services for the sake of projects that may have a higher priority elsewhere or whatever, but knowing what we're doing and knowing what the outcomes are going to be as a result of that reduction or service reduction or whatever. Like I say, you're absolutely right that it is going to help us to achieve efficiency in an informal way it has, yeah.
I guess one last comment, then just to pick up on the language. One key, I think, thing for this council and for our public is finding definable performance measures, the KPIs, whether it be in the wellness index or whatever it is. We're seeing in a large part of our planning process, it started way back when with the community-based strategic plan, and now we're moving forward more strategically, and the active task force, all sorts of, and we'll see community-based plan strategic update. We're trying to find ways, I guess, that we can find that common language, and find the common benchmarks, so that we can explain the return of investment to our taxpayers. What are you getting for your value per dollar and your tax dollar from this council, this town? And I think we're the gatekeepers of that. So by finding that common language, establishing the benchmarks, and then reporting those annually, is a way that everyone can be on the same page and understand what they're getting for their tax dollars. So that said, thank you very much, Dean. I think we'll all look into diving into the information that you provided to us, and we'll set the table for the budget discussions for your department anyway. Next on the agenda is 5.2, and that is the community-based strategic plan refresh, and the proposed refresh and public input. And I will look to Executive Director Stewart.
Yeah.
in your package for the meeting today, council will have the staff report as well as a proposed document that's being proposed for your endorsement to consult with the public. And upon some discussion with our CAO for Rita Min, I have a hopefully short presentation just to take you through and point out some of the highlighted changes. So there was a good reason to proceed with this proposed refresh because the last strat plan, and you'll see on our website, and I'm sure everybody's read it and seen the annual reports and maybe gone to the town halls, a lot has really changed. We've had a new election, there's a judicial inquiry, which is largely, substantially gone through most of it. Housing prices have rocketed. We've had delivery of the waterfront master plan, and I really could go on and on, but there was a time now to test whether the 2015 plan was actually the plan we need for 2020 and beyond. This is a key foundational document. It will, and strat plans should, communicate the consensus of you as council with key stakeholders and others to marry together the many plans we've made, transportation, official plans, cycling, et cetera, and to question if there are other plans we still need. And I do want to clarify that even though I'm presenting this material, there have been diverse sources of the material, including council and staff and many others who contributed. So I don't want to present this material as final, or for that matter, even my own ideas. We've endeavored as staff to take a balanced view of what the pressures and opportunities are and to reflect those back to council. So on slide 2, the history of this is that after 2015, in 2019, Strategy Corp conducted interviews with council and senior staff and a public half-day workshop that council participated in, and hopefully some of the members of the audience might have been in that audience or participated in that as well. And at the end, they published an interim report capturing that initiative, which is also included in your package. If you go right to the back, there's a deck that's provided by Strategy Corp. Staff at all levels then provided input, and we suggested this strat plan consultation document. That's the first thing after the staff report in the report. There's a few comments that I've received already. One of them had to do with the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the question was, are these all facts? And I'd say, no, we haven't investigated every one of those strengths or weaknesses as facts. Those are perceptions of people in the community, on council, et cetera, around where we are and what could be coming. So why is this effort worth it? Why have we put so much time into rethinking a strategic plan? We want to make sense of the complex challenges that council and town are facing. We want to look at what it would take to leave a legacy. This is a tool for focus, so that in 20 to 30 years, or hopefully even much sooner, people will see that we took a look and figured out what was profound and impactful on the public policy front in Collingwood, and that we made decisions to move us forward, even where they were not easy. On slide 3, I'm going to move into our first point of discussion. And the first point of discussion is about our vision for Collingwood. So a vision is really by definition a vivid and descriptive image of the future. It has to be meaningful. It should be meaningful to council, to staff, to stakeholders, to businesses, to residents. And really, it should describe something that you really feel is your Collingwood. If you were to say, my Collingwood includes something, it should be in this vision. And the vision is really a pivotal piece of a strategic plan because it's the difference between the vision and our current reality that really drives what we would do in the strategic plan. And that bears some explanation, I think. A strat plan answers the question, what do we really need to do to transform or change our trajectory so we go from where we are today toward the vision of the future that we want to, that we want to achieve. So the strategic plan will focus on the difficult challenges we have and remind ourselves to stay the course on some really important things that we're doing. And I would say it's not a description of everything we do and or everything we value. So some things we do every day, maybe some very important things that Dean just mentioned in his PRC deliverables may or may not be in the strategic plan simply for those reasons. So now back to the points of discussion. On this slide, slide 3, there's some bolded text, and it talks about a few items that have been suggested. A vision shouldn't be too long, but it needs to be enough that you feel something about it. So we're talking about Collingwood offering residents and visitors healthy activities. What's new is this focus on inclusive community connections and civic pride, arts and culture, which wasn't explicit in the vision previously, and adding that it's a hub for successful entrepreneurs and businesses offering not just jobs, but rewarding jobs. We've introduced the idea of leading edge staff, and maybe as staff, we thought that was quite important, but we do think that we help council to execute what you decide to be the policy and strategy of the municipality. We want community decisions to be responsible as well as sustainable, to protect and leverage our core strengths, which we've re-articulated several: the vibrant downtown, we've added the vibrant community, the healthy natural environment in all seasons, and our extensive waterfront that we think is really important to show that it's interconnected with the town, and our strong cultural heritage, which on its own marries our shipyard history, our Indigenous history, our economic history with today. On the next slide is a first of 4 other points of discussion that I want to talk about for the plan. Collingwood has been experiencing unprecedented growth. It has mounting investment needs that council's heard about: water treatment expansion, roads, information technology, judicial inquiry, and we need to attract businesses that support our economy and to support the businesses that we have. So we want to continue with the thrust toward fiscal sustainability and building and enhancing public trust. What's new is that we have recognition of the need for human skills and technology. The SWOT included content about under-resourcing of the staff, retention threats of filling positions with qualified people who want to stay, and the opportunity is there to use technology to optimize our resources and improve our services. We already know we're on a journey to proactively strengthen the town's abilities, improve good governance, openness, accessibility, accountability, and transparency. So we think this recognition of human needs and technology is something we need to focus on and work together on. Also new is the customer service. The town exists. We're all here to provide services that support people and help businesses thrive. We're often a monopoly. We're the only place you can go to get that building permit. So it's critical in shaping trust and perceptions of the municipality that we have great customer service. And so we have here the commitment to residents and visitors to continue with our customer service initiatives, including actively managing the service levels and the suite of services. And that also links back to the presentation that Director Culver just did, which outlined the services in his department. One of the things that quotes that I really like about services was from Rupert Reed, who's a think tank in the UK, and his quote was, "Imagine a government that's as efficient as Amazon, as innovative as Google, and as well-designed as an iPhone." So I think that really inspires me to think about, well, how could Collingwood be like that? And we laugh a little, but we've got some really world-class folks here and world-class capabilities. The next slide is slide number 5. And it's the second of the 4 points of discussion. And it's really about growth and prosperity. We talked a little bit about economic development already, and we wish to continue, we recommend continuing a focus on economic development, supporting and attracting businesses, including the potential for tech hubs in one or more areas. I know there, because I was privileged to attend, that the Mayor's Advisory Group on Economic Development recently met to kick off some of their deliberations. And they've already started discussing input that I think will improve this plan and with which we can augment it. And certainly be looking forward to incorporating that input in the next version of the plan. There were a couple of new points related to growth and prosperity. At first we put in here, do an official plan update, but upon discussion we realized it was really not just the official plan, it was our overall land use planning and regulatory framework, and we were looking to do two things. One is to accommodate the growth that we know we need, and the other thing is to protect our core strengths. So we don't want uncontrolled growth. The core strengths are in the vision that we've already talked about. Also new is this idea of actively attracting a full spectrum of workers, and we've put content in that includes looking at affordable housing, or a full suite of housing, including affordable, and the expansion of transit. That marries well with our active transportation plans, and there's even some mention of examining how proceeding more toward being a college or university town may actually address a number of our skilled labor gaps and also the potential for a full suite of workers. The third of the 4 points of discussion is on slide 6. We certainly endorse continuing to focus and remind ourselves about active, healthy living and collaboration with our health and social service partners, many of whom are at other levels of government, including our Simcoe County. But what we've added is a new one. I think it's been inherent in Collingwood certainly since I've been here, but it came up a number of times in the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And that was the sense of community that people have in Collingwood. And whether it is something we value or something that we want to actually work on and promote. And there was a number of comments. There was some us versus them comments. There were newcomers versus long-timers comments. There was community as a strength comments. And we realized that we would like to look at that as something to actively pursue. And finally, there were quite a few comments on climate change, and of course quite recently was Council passed the climate change crisis resolution, and we wanted to reflect that need for focused action here in the recommended strategic plan. The last of the 4 points of discussion that we wanted to highlight is on page 7. And continuing support for arts and culture was deemed very important. We wanted to consider the best ways to support artists, and there's differing opinions on that. One is maybe they're not conflicting opinions, but we've got a range of different opinions put forward. Some were about building facilities or spaces. Some were about other types of encouragement. Feasibility study, for example, for an arts center to help us decide among those options was one thing that was put forward. And with festivals, there was a recommendation that we continue to actively do them and that we look at ones that concentrate on our culture, our heritage, and our own core strengths. Finally, the last piece for review was revisiting the balance between our rich heritage and our vision. We weren't sure that we've got it quite right, and that there was some work required to look at our heritage district. Do we have all the boundaries and locations correct? Is our funding, policies, and programs at the right levels? We've also wanted on the heritage side to support multicultural attributes. We have a growing multicultural population. We want to make everyone understand that they're welcome, and to understand and to appreciate what everyone brings to our community and the contributions of many cultures, including our local Indigenous cultures. And with that, the last slide talks about, it's slide number 8, meaningful two-way communication. So So what we have is a draft of an update. We want to offer meaningful two-way communication with residents, opportunities to have people participate in discussions and obtain information, hopefully with the participation of council members and staff. And I know council members have mentioned to me about a deep interest in the community's input. So we proposed here that there would be, pending your endorsement, a media release, social media, town website, an item on Engage Collingwood, town pages, e-newsletter, etc., that we're inviting comment and the draft to date. Interactive in-person public town hall engagement sessions, starting potentially as early as December 10th on a Coffee with Council event. Circulation of the plan via email to known stakeholders and partner groups who've been vocal in our community, and a return to this committee in the first quarter of next year for endorsement. I know there's a lot in the plan. I know for me, I tend to walk around town with it in my briefcase because reading it all through once doesn't really bring all those relevant things to mind. It's when I talk to residents and staff and issues come up that I really validate to myself that it has the right things in it. So I would encourage you to do that. And if you look at a strategic plan and you compare achieving our vision with winning a war, when you have a strategy, it selects the battles worth having and resources those battles. So that's the thing I'd like you to keep in mind as you go forward. And there is one question, and I anticipate there'll be good discussion at this point, and that would be, do we, based on this discussion, update the plan now, or would we, for example, circulate it, take all of the input, and then update it afterwards? I lean toward circulating it because I think that there's still some input to be had. Thank you for your attention and your participation in this endeavor.
Thank you, Sonia. And we'll now open the mic to members of the public who have any questions or comments about the presentation you just received. Go on for it, please. We know you are, Margaret, but please state your name.
Thank you. Council and Mayor Saunderson. There's a few comments and questions that I came up with in reading that 40-some-odd page document, but some of it was clarified through your presentation. There was just one comment, and my focus is on heritage. In your vision, you mentioned the strong cultural heritage. May I suggest that it should read strong cultural and built heritage? Because the architecture here is really important to the town as well. And further on in the report, it talked about Heritage Committee reform is important. I don't know if that can be clarified or that would be coming out when you share it with the public later. But it sort of drew my attention to what did you have planned for this? That was one. And following up on the heritage, it said that the heritage preservation was missing in some areas and perceived onerous in other areas. And had those specific areas been mapped out, and where did you get the information from? I know you can't give those answers today, but I'm just raising what came to my attention. And also under the heritage, there was an item that said, examine the feasibility of expanding the heritage district, and I think you touched on that in this presentation. And I know over the past year, started when Ron Martin was working, that $30,000 has been put into a reserve fund for specific use of the expansion of the district, and I know Marjorie can confirm that, and sort of saved up over several years until there was enough to do a feasibility study. So that is sitting there. Okay, leaving the heritage, in connecting with the public, they were talking about bylaw enforcement. And I know this has come to the council table a few times, and I think Council Jeffrey had addressed it a few times, that it not be complaint driven. And that's the way it seems to run now, is a complaint driven bylaw enforcement in many areas. And sometimes that pits neighbor against neighbor. And if there were other ways, and probably it means hiring staff, but that was one concern that I have. And then there was another area of developing a more engaged process, re-short-term rentals. And I wasn't really sure there. They sort of pointed out that maybe there were opportunities to sell licenses to do this, and I'm wondering if that focus was on Airbnbs and whether that was now looking at being allowed. Because I know it's going on in many of the residential areas, and having people coming and going all the time from houses, it really changes the atmosphere of the residential neighborhood. It's nice being a front porch neighborhood where you get to know your neighbors, and if it's Airbnb, it's a swinging door and parties at night. There was another mention in there about the multi-use rec facility, and I know Dean presented quite a thorough presentation on what is happening now, and I know what we have now really isn't meeting our needs, especially if you look to the far future. And it was put in there that a feasibility study is possible in that. And I would suggest that we really need it sooner rather than later. I am actively involved in using the town pool, and it is busy. I was just explaining that there's sometimes 3 and 4 people to a lane trying to do swimming lanes, and it really gets hectic in there, so it'd be really nice to look, to the future. Anyway, these are just questions that came out when I was reading it, so hopefully the input can be addressed as it goes forward. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Margaret. Any other comments from the public?
Thanks, Mayor Saunderson and the committee for this opportunity. My name is Dave Roy. I'm here as a representative of the local climate action team, which is formed recently, and we're trying to work with local communities to reduce our carbon footprint through sustainable action. We've had the chance to engage with a number of you already, and I appreciate this opportunity as well. I'd like to thank Ms. Skinner for this report, and I just had one question and then one comment that I'd like to make about it. First off, I'd like to say I think there's a lot of really substantial additions to this strategic plan that are very important, and I certainly would encourage the committee to allow the public input as was suggested going forward. I think there would be a lot of interest in this, and there are a lot of things that people will want to weigh in on before we formalize this going forward for the next number of years. So I'd encourage you to consider that, please. And I'd just like to clarify, there were a number of charts that were listed in the report that was circulated to the public, including some documents that are labeled chart 4A, 4B, 4C, and then at the very end of the document, there was a 6th graph that was listed on there. And I was just wondering if you could clarify for the public which of those documents were to go forward, or what was the intent of those different graphs. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, David.
Through you, Chair. The way that it had worked originally is that Strategy Corp conducted the public meeting with council, and what they did is they provided 3 different options for the go-forward strategic plan, which were the charts 4A, 4B, and 4C. Those are all included in your package. They're probably almost the last few pages of the Strategy Corp report, which is the very end of the package. What staff did was we took what Strategy Corp had provided and suggested one single option, which is the one right after the staff report in in the package, so that would be approximately, actually, it's page 4 of the staff report. Does that make sense? So all of the versions that were previously provided by Strategy Corp could be considered by council as options, although we recommend that we go out to staff, out to the public for consultation with one option and see what the public thinks as opposed to many. So that would be page 4 of the staff report.
Thank you, Sonia. If I could just ask both of the speakers from the public, Martin, if you can just make sure you sign the registry before you go today, so we have you on record. Mr. Brown, you want to speak?
Just for a question to the group, I'm not quite sure where we were invited to attend, and we're not actually on your agenda anywhere. And so as I'm listening to these presentations, I see a very significant link into the strategic plan as well as the PRC. So I'm not sure whether we should come up now or like wait for the public.
We go, actually, you can certainly give your input now on the strat plan as you've, from what you've heard. If you had a specific delegation about the upcoming budget teas, that is under item 7, which is public delegations, where you would have 5 minutes there. But if you think it's
30
nice
seconds.
with the strat plan discussion,
Yes,
you're welcome.
very much so, yes.
Okay, how would you do it now?
First, thank everybody for allowing us to come today. I think it was very important to have that recognition and to allow us to come in today, because listening to both the presentations today was very insightful for myself, and I'm sure for the rest of our group, how critical presentation related to the Collingwood Arts, Culture and Entertainment Group work fits into the strategic plan, fits into the PRC presentation. The language that I heard was things like mental health and well-being and arts and culture being embedded into your vision, which wasn't there before. How we fit into that is very important. Maybe one very small piece of it, but if you relate to Richard Florida, his work, and relate to culture and arts and the importance of mental health and well-being of our society, economic well-being of communities, it is a critical foundation to the work that you're doing. And I'd like you just to recognize it part of your work. Dean, I was actually thrilled and wrote down a number of comments from your presentation, which I've not seen before, that I think very, very much marries to what we're doing. And then I come back afterwards, just talk about our ask as it relates to the financial side. But just to thank you for that. I think that really does underline the importance.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? All right, then I will turn to council. The recommendation is that staff report CC 2019-3 be received and the standing committee receive the proposed refresh and community-based strategic plan, and support that staff undertake a public consultation on it prior to council's final consideration of a refreshed strategic plan. Can I get a mover and second? Moved by Council Mann, and a second by Council Berman. Questions or comments, council? Councilor Hamlin.
I don't know why I always mess up and say that. Sorry. I just wanted to say I thoroughly enjoyed that presentation. And I was worried as we awaited this draft plan that because we were doing a refresh instead of an update, that we wouldn't be embracing the things that are going on in town now. But I must say that Ms. Skinner's presentation has really assured me that that is not the case. And I was very happy to hear things to do with attracting employees and embracing our tech north brand new, embracing our arts and culture community. And anyway, I was just really enthused about this. And I've been sort of dreading this going forward, and now I'm excited. Because I think we will get a lot of community input about these things. And I also wanted to say what I liked and what I'm going to use when talking to residents is the phrase that Ms. Skinner suggested, which was, my Collingwood includes ... because I think that's an easy way for everyone to say, what would I like to see in this document? Lastly, I just wanted to respond to Margaret's concern that this document was proposing what I'll call a regulation of the, and again, what I call illegal hotel uses in residential areas. I don't believe, Mr. Mayor, that our council has decided that we're going to take that approach yet, which is merely a regulation of those uses, as opposed to the current approach, which is they're not allowed in residential areas. So I just wanted to really ask that question to clarify from staff through you, Mr. Mayor, that we haven't made any decision on that yet.
I can confirm that no decision has been made on the regulation of short-term accommodations, and maybe I'll look to Director Farr to explain whether or not they are permitted under our current planning and zoning.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for you to respond to Councilor Hammer's question. At a recent council meeting, council approved a report presented by a chief building official. It included a recommendation to review the options available to council for examining the short-term accommodation issue. And we've further commented on the planning and building services group on the likelihood of addressing that issue and in detail and probably general terms as well through the official plan exercise.
Thank you.
Councilor, any comments or questions on the strategic plan? Seeing none, I just want to thank all staff and the executive director for hard work pushing this forward. It's something we've been rolling around, I guess, since July 5. And my comment really has been that, since 2015, when we reached out and started the discussion in the community about strategic vision for our community moving forward, I think the scope of the discussion has changed. It was more, at the time, like a roadmap kind of exercise, and now I think it's really become a visionary and aspirational exercise, and given the changes that have come in our community and the developments on a number of very important fronts, and sustainability, I really think sums that up, whether it be economic, social, or environmental. I think this is an important discussion, and I think that what I wanted to just pick up on was Sonia's comment that really that this is a visionary exercise. It's looking at where we see our community in 5, 10, 15 years, and that will guide them in discussion about how we get there. So this is really the exercise in determining where we want to get. And then once we got those primary aspirational goals in sight, then we have the discussions about how we get there. And one last comment, Sonia also alluded to this, that it was very interesting. On Monday and Tuesday, the task force, or the advisory team, met on the economic development front, and it was quite amazing to sit in the afternoon session on Tuesday when they provided their report back to myself and staff to see it was almost a mirror image of the issues we've been talking about in the strategic plan refresh process. But what was very interesting, and it was just coming at it from a very different lens. So it was taking the priorities we've been talking about here, but it was looking at them through a very economic and financially driven lens to say that there's a business case really for pursuing all of these goals. And so it was a very eye-opening experience, and I think that comment that you late I'm in favor of waiting to get the public comment on this process before we look at finalizing the strategic plan is a good one, because I think it has been, and it continues to evolve, very much a community of community mindedness that's focusing these aspirations, and between all a very broad sector of our population, our staff, and this council. So whether it be the cultural, the social, the economic, young families, weekend residents, they're seeing a very similar vision amongst the board, across the board, for different reasons. And so I think that's something we need to celebrate and get the synergies there and work together to make this happen. So I'm very much looking forward to this, and thank you again for your report and to all staff who worked on this. So with that being done, I will call the vote on the resolution on recommendation. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Next item is the 2019-16 asset sales survey results. For Ms. Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to quickly summarize the results of the survey, there were 761 responses. 444 responses left comments. 317 people did not leave any comments, just hit the radio buttons. And there were 197 that only left comments. They didn't click any of the radio buttons. So what I've done, all 444 of the comments, the staff developed the 11 options that you see up here. And I spent quite some time summarizing not only the radio buttons, which were very straightforward, and they're shown in the appendix with all of the comments that we received. And the top one was paying down our debt. Collingwood terminals was next, and I will just point out that not all of the 234 comments were favorable. This is just a full list in the numeric order that they ended up at. This is, again, a chart of all the comments that had new themes that when staff had developed our list of options, we had put forward. You see that overwhelmingly the community or public input was for supporting the arts, culture, and theater, or a theater or community multi-use facility of some sort. There were actually 44 comments that were one of a kind, and I especially like this one as an example because it's preserving natural areas that make this area so special. It feels like now is a critical time to make good decisions that work towards keeping green areas, not just in designated parks, but also in new developments and throughout the town. Perhaps investing in ways to bring developers and experts on board to decide how to grow green. It would be great if Collingwood was an example city for how to grow while preserving natural beauty and livability. There were a few others that were along a similar line, but I kind of like to pick this one. And this is my last slide, and it's just on the next steps. The public's going to have another opportunity to provide additional input on December the 10th when we have a coffee with council session in the council chambers. And what staff are requesting through this report is direction from council as to which options that should be more fully flushed out and reported back to council and the public before the final decisions are made. That's my presentation, Your Worship, short and sweet.
Thank you, Marjorie. Is there anyone in the public that would like to comment on the presentation with respect to the use of investment of gas and sale proceeds? Yes, please come forward.
This is not a question, it's a math question. What does 761 represent in percentage of our population that would be affected or that could actually have given comments? What are we looking at?
Our current population, I think, is listed at 22,000.
So I just want to know how, the weight of this 761.
The weight in terms
The
of
weight
what
of
we
it in
do.
terms of percentage, you know, what are we looking at?
I think it's about a half a percentage point.
Half a percentage point of people who have
Oh,
commented?
sorry, 3.1%.
3.1?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, if I can just ask you to please leave your name, so that we
Oh,
have
I'm sorry.
record of you.
Charlotte O'Day.
Charlotte, if you can just sign the registry before you go.
I will.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to comment on this? Seeing none, then I will look for a mover and seconder for the following. That the Strategic Initiative Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to council. The council received the staff report T 2019-16, including all the public comments and input on the use of proceeds and direct staff to include the ideas gathered from the survey process and the materials to be available for public meetings. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councilor Berman, Councilor Madigan. You guys are on top of it today. All right, questions or comments, council? Councilor Allen.
I have one comment and one question. So my comment is the same as, I think it was Charlotte who came forward. And I think it's about our surveys. And I think that my comment, I guess, is that when we take this forward to the public, that really what we are offering is information only, and that this is not a scientific survey. It's been taken. And I don't know, and I'll just raise this as part of the comment, whether in the future we should be taking advantage of, I'll say, third parties who do more scientific surveys if we really want to judge public opinion on a topic, or whether maybe this is fine as long as we're not couching it in we should be paying down the debt because some small percentage of our population pushed the button and went on the website. My question is, our treasurer suggested that council give some direction on flushing this out in terms of options, and I was just wondering how, through you, Mr. Chair, how she would recommend we do this. Is this something she would like us to email her with, or did she want resolutions from council, or how should we do this?
We'll look to Marjorie, and then I think we'll see anyone else on the comments part.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe that the last time, if I'm not mistaken, council directed that we take the top 3 options and further develop them. And I kind of thought that it would be along those similar lines this time, but I'm not set in that pattern at all. Council has another direction as to how the options should be chosen. I'm all for it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to build on and through your worship and respond to Councillor Hamlin's point, which I think is a really valid one. When you look at the survey results, I think you cannot necessarily base all your decisions on quantity. I think it is important as staff that we're given the opportunity to go through a thorough public policy and public finance analysis of what the options are, what the implications are. I think when we're doing that, we will make reference to what we heard from the public, and we can include some of the quantitative information in that regard. But my opinion would be that staff be given the opportunity to do an independent, objective analysis of how the money can be best spent, given the emerging and current priorities of the municipality. And while we're doing that analysis, we make reference and benchmark those options against what we heard from the public.
If I could, Mr. Chair, just as a follow-up question, how would you like council's input on this whole plan?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think what we're looking at is that we're going to go through another open house and a public consultation exercise. This is to provide the public with another opportunity to provide us with comments, but also to disclose what we've heard so far, so they can contextualize any further comments. I think this will give council an opportunity to send us feedback directly on what they're hearing from their constituents, or provide us with their own view on how the money should be spent. The reason why I think we're trying to have one more opportunity for public input is that we are going to be in the middle of the budget process for 2020, and I think this will give us an opportunity to bundle these things together, and that was the intention, is to bring these things that are related, so that you have an opportunity when you're thinking about investments in 2020 and beyond, as part of the budgetary process, we think about how we would invest in state proceeds. So it's coming together of a number of various things, which we hope you can wait until after the December 10th open house, or you can provide your comments to us between now and then, or as part of the budget deliberations.
Thank you very much, that's helpful.
I'd like to just make a follow-up comment on the issue of surveys. That's just one aspect, one way that we gather information from the town. We've had a variety of responses to different surveys that have gone into the over 1,000 to smaller numbers like this. I know through our community-based strategic plan refresh update, we had a significant number, I think, of responses. And it's just one aspect of the process. These are designed to get the public's feedback. It's not simply a numbers game. The top voting items won't automatically be adopted. It still has to go through council and with staff's recommendation to find what is the best way to leverage those tax dollars for us moving forward. Community-based strategic plan is a big part of that. We have to get a turn up for that, waterfront master plan. So it is another source of us, our way to engage the public to get that information, but it's not simply determined by the numbers, the most popular items. It goes through further discussion, and it's certainly something we take very seriously and we look very hard at, but it isn't determinative. Any other comments? Councilor McLeod.
Mine's actually a question through your worship to Treasurer Leonard. We have a figure in front of us, 18.6, I believe is the latest update, and it's been sitting there for, we put it somewhere. Is it bigger now than it was when we first started having these conversations? And has there been any interest on our investment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we earn approximately 2.35% interest on that 18 million. We haven't put it in any type of a long-term investment because we don't know ultimately what the outcome of the decision is going to be. So we didn't want to tie it up for a lot longer. And to be very honest, we've done the research on some of the longer-term amounts, and we're getting more money, more interest at 2.4 today in our bank account than we can get on 2, 3, 4, 5 year GIC. So we just left it in the bank.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, council? With that said, I will call the vote then, and the resolution is to give staff further direction, come back with recommendation. And we will be holding the talk to the council on December 10th, so we will get more input from the public on that. All in favor? Carried. That's it for staff reports. It brings us to departmental updates, the lobbyist registry, public engagement update.
Through your worship to the standing committee, this is just a brief update to our last presentation we had at the SIC meeting on October 31st to update you on the lobbyist registry. So it was posted on Engage Collingwood on November 7th. We have background information on there as well as a timeline, the past documents that have been considered, FAQ section for any questions that come up that aren't posted on here, and a question and answer which is live with the public. We have 2 questions that came through right now, and we're looking for more if people are interested in submitting them. We also had a media release go out informing the public of this consultation, as well as specific emails sent to stakeholder groups throughout the community. website, bingo, social media outlets, and local papers. There's also an additional opportunity for public input, as both the CAO and the mayor have alluded to. So on December 10th, we're having a coffee with council open house in our council chambers starting at 5 o'clock, where people can come and answer, get any questions they have answered, as well as provide any information that staff may have to be handed out to them. Included in this coffee for council will be the proposed 2020 operation and capital budget, our strat plan update, the lobbyist registry program, Sunset Point Park playground designs, Collingwood grain terminal process options, asset sale proceeds updates, and the economic development action plan survey. So after the public consultation period is complete, we hope to come to council on December 16th for the final program to be considered.
Thank you, Becky. I'll see if there are any questions from the public, comments from the public. Seeing none, I'll go to council. Any questions or comments for Becky? Thanks, Becky. And now that brings us to public delegations. So this is where the invitation comes in. The one for the
Thank you very much.
thank you for coming.
My name is Don Brahman. I haven't introduced myself properly. My name is Don Brahman. Before you, you have a package that you did give us a handout to Becky sent that around to you. I'm not going to read from that to you faster than I can speak. Some of you may have already seen this, but in case you hadn't, you thought it would be prudent to circulate it. On the very first page of our handout there, we just talked again about what our vision is. And the vision is to position Collingwood as the center of arts, culture, and entertainment in the South Georgia Bay area. And so it's inclusive of a wide range of geography, because we see this town and the growth of this town is going to be going under now and into the future is significant. And we will probably be looking at 150,000 people around us that are looking for venues and entertainment and so on. So I'm not going to take you through the proposition other than to underline the fact that we have established a number of cornerstones. One is inclusivity, one is accessibility, sustainability, and obviously community engagement. We can consider those to be vital to this project as it would be any other project that the town undertakes. And obviously is acknowledging the land and our relationship with First Nations people. And we've embedded that in a bit in one of our recommendations, which is that once this center becomes a true destination, that we incorporated some form of historical museum or some other way to identify not just the Indigenous, but also our marine and beaver history to celebrate those components. What I wanted to focus on today was really the importance of value. And our CAO mentioned something earlier about value add and establishing, what's the return on equity, return on investment to our community. And again, I'm not going to read through them all. They're fairly evident as far as what something like this can do as an economic engine, as a social engine to our community. And I wanted just to add, and I'm not playing with numbers here because people were just questioning the validity of our survey. But if you actually take the number of people who are eligible voters, the younger people out of the equation, you're probably looking at 14,000 rather than 22,000, and it's closer to a 5% return, which is not bad return on a survey. Now, that being said, the 189 folks that put the arts in their commentary section represents 25% of the respondents, which puts us in the top 5. So somewhere out there is interest in what we're trying to do with this particular movement. Again, I touched earlier on that, how I see it now relating more strategically within the strategic plan. It's not just a project or a tactical effort, it's a critical part of your overall strategy. I'm not going to go over the center itself because one of our asks in this is this concept of the feasibility study. The feasibility study will determine a lot of the things that we've kind of put out there as ideas. But to talk to Sonia's concept of visioning, I come from a background of both marketing and service, and without vision, ask is a number of things. Before we jump in that, I want to update you on what our group is. The other question I was asked is who else is on your group? So at the bottom of the last page, you'll see a list of individuals who make up our group. And in addition to those individuals, we have a number of people who are getting involved with the organization through what we've now determined as being subcommittees. So things got so public that we had a huge outcry of people saying, how do I get involved? Where can I fit into your organization? So we've created some subcommittees, which are listed behind the names of these individuals at the bottom, in order to keep our core committee small and allow us to reach into the broader community as widely as we could. This will also include some information sessions where we're going to engage various groups to try to get input on what we're trying to do. We've also registered now as a non-profit organization, and we are also looking at participating through deputation in your budgeting process in the weeks to come, where we provide more detail on what we are actually looking for to allow you to plug that into your budget, and then looking for fingers crossed. So the real ask for us are the two highlighted ones. One is support a project with appropriate seed money. We'll define that next week. And to participate wholly in the feasibility study and work with the PLC group to make that come about. And we'll also be working with our fundraising group to look at how we can contribute from a donor perspective. So this is not an ask on its own, this is an ask as a collaborative manner. And then not last, but at least as important to me, is the ability to form a working group to take advantage of this organization that's standing here today, to work with you, with council and staff on a collaborative basis to look at what should the budgets be, what should the terms of reference be, how do we move this project forward into the future, and we work hand in hand to do that. Those are my asks. Thank you again for your time. Questions?
That's all the questions for Mr. Brown. Very nice.
I noticed at the bottom of the back page, several people have SME next to their name, and I'm not familiar with that.
Marketing term is called subject matter expert. So we have a number of